我係無敵嘅。我都話咗㗎啦，冇人夠我打嘅。
Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. I'm really excited today because I'm going to talk about my new favorite movie, and I'm being hyperbolic, but only ever so slightly. It's Love on Delivery. Hell to the yes. Classic Stephen Chow film from 1994. This is the Nova release. So this is a South Korean release. And I have to give a huge shout out to Lee, one of our patrons, who is a huge Stephen Chow fan. And when he found out that I had not seen a lot of classic Stephen Chow films, sent me an amazing package of a lot of classic Stephen Chow films. And so there is a Vinegar Syndrome release of this movie, and people have said that the Vinegar Syndrome release looks incredible. It's a brand new 4K scan and all the bells and whistles and got a lot of great bonus material on it. I am planning on picking that release up soon because I love this movie so much that I want to own another copy of it with more bonus material and stuff like that. But I wanted to watch it on this release first because this is a release that was sent to me, and someone put a lot of care and thought and effort into getting this to me. And this is legitimately my new favorite movie. I would go so far as to say this is, and I really do mean this, and I know that there's like some recency bias because I just watched this movie, and like I said, I am being slightly hyperbolic. This is legitimately, I think, one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Like, truly. Maybe not top 5, maybe not top 10, but if you ask me right now, like gun to my head, what are the top 25 funniest movies you've ever seen or your favorite comedies, I would put that movie on that list. And I wouldn't feel guilty or weird or, about it at all. I would be very happy to have it on there. I got the same sense of like very pure, like primal, fundamental, childlike glee and joy watching that film that I get from like my absolute favorite Jackie Chan films, Sammo Hung films, like movies like Winners and Sinners, Wheels on Meals, whatever, like Police Story, Super Cop, like whatever my favorite, other Project A. Like, it's just a pure joy film. It is so funny. It is so goofy. It is so charming. There were multiple scenes in this movie where I had to stop the movie because I was laughing so hard that I couldn't read the subtitles anymore because I was like crying and my eyes were closing because I was laughing so freaking hard. This is by far my favorite Stephen Chow film I've seen so far, and that is not to knock the other ones, because I've really liked the other ones that I've seen, like, quite a bit. This came out the same year as From Beijing with Love, and in that year, I wrote this down, there were 3 Stephen Chow movies in the top 10 at the Hong Kong box office. Hail to the Judge, From Beijing with Love, and Love on Delivery. This was number 6 at the box office that year. It made 36 million Hong Kong dollars. The Return of the God of Gamblers was number 1 that year, and number 2 is Drunken Master, if I'm not mistaken. And From Beijing with Love was actually higher on the list than this movie. I think it was at number 4. To give you a brief plot overview, and then I'm going to talk about why I love this movie so much. And I'm going to talk about 2 things. One, just why I think it's so damn funny. And 2, I'm going to talk about why I think it's a really, really smart movie. And one of the things that I think Stephen Chow does not get enough credit for, at least, again, very limited experience for me. I've seen like maybe 4 or 5 Stephen Chow movies, right? Like I've seen Love on Delivery, From Beijing with Love. I saw Royal Tramp. I saw one of the Fight Back to School movies like years ago. It was on YouTube and I watched it. I think it was the second one. And I've seen the Shaolin Soccer and Kung Fu Hustle, I think, so whatever that is, 5 movies. But in my brief kind of love of Stephen Chow's films, and as I've been getting more and more into them, as I kind of like look at what people are saying about them and stuff, one of the things I think he doesn't get credit for is how damn smart these movies are. Like, they're so smart. They're so good at being dumb that it's fucking brilliant. And I want to talk about that a little bit. But just to give you a little bit about the story, Stephen Chow plays a delivery guy for a restaurant, and he's kind of like down on his luck. Stephen Chow is totally deadpan, as he has been in all the other movies I've seen him in, right? Where he has this very like straight delivery, but most of the world around him is completely ridiculous. And that's one of the things that creates a lot of the comedy in the film. And it's very, very funny and appealing to see this guy just like deadpanning all these lines while like all of this insanity is happening around him. And some of the lines are so funny. Like laugh out loud, have to pause the movie to catch your breath. Like so funny. The dialogue is so clever. And I know I'm probably missing a lot of it because there's a lot of puns in Cantonese and stuff like that, wordplay that I'm not catching. But even just through the being translated through the subtitles into English, it is so funny. So Stephen Chow is this delivery guy, and he gets a crush on this woman, and the woman is in a martial arts school. And so she has this, like, the sensei guy who's teaching her, and the sensei guy has like a crush on her too. And then this other romantic interest for her kind of like shows up. And so Stephen Chow is this kind of like down on his luck loser dude who really likes this woman and is trying his best to like woo her and win her over. But there's all these people around him who are like more masculine or more intelligent or whatever, right? And a lot of them are like kind of like tropes from other types of movies, which is really funny to see. It's like the everyman who might be like the average person in the audience in this movie is the guy who can't get the girl, while all of these fantasy characters around him, like these people who seem like more so like movie characters, keep trying to like woo her and take her away. And so as you have this very meta thing, right, of like directly appealing to the audience, which is one of the very smart things that this movie does. And then there's this like, this movie is also very much kind of like a parody of the tropes of like Shaw Brothers and old school martial arts movies, where you have like the Stephen Chow character ends up finding like a master who's like this total like, he's played by Ingman Tai, and he's like this like total like down on his luck, like kind of like shifty, suspicious, like loser, low level crook type of guy who becomes like his master. And so you have this kind of like master-student relationship that's very much like a send-up of Shaw Brothers movies. And yet, and again, another thing that's like really smart about this movie is that the main through line of this film is the love story, and of this guy trying to get the girl and trying to have her fall in love with him because he's in love with her, and facing all these adversaries, right? So like you don't have to have seen a lot of Shaw Brothers movies and realizing they're doing like a parody of that in order to enjoy this film, because you can just enjoy this film as a movie about like a down on his luck dude who's in love with this woman who's trying to get the girl, right? Which is like the ultimate classic story of every like comedy, rom-com, love story type of movie, right? And even a lot of dramas too. Someone who's down on their luck, who's in love with someone, and hijinks ensue. This movie does two really, really smart things with its structure. One of them is that the first two scenes, the opening scene is like a parody of like the opening scenes from Shaw Brothers movies, where people are like doing martial arts against like a color backdrop and like these ludicrous moves and big fights and stuff like that, right? And then the second scene, which is one of the scenes that was so funny, I was laughing so hard I had to pause the movie. Like I was dying laughing. The second scene is like a send-up of Terminator 2, which is one of my favorite movies ever. That is, well, I guess that's actually kind of technically, it's like the second/third scene, kind of depending on how you divide up the scenes. But it's so damn funny. It is so funny. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but I was dying laughing. So what the movie does right away is it establishes this really ludicrous tone, so that moving forward, it gives itself license to do the most ridiculous shit ever, and you'll just accept it because the opening is so ludicrous that's your understanding of the world, because it's the first thing you see. So you're like, oh, okay, this is just the world of this movie, right? So then rather than starting on like a less ridiculous comedic note, right, if they had done that, when it gets totally preposterous, you'd be like, this movie is spinning out of control. Because it starts by spinning out of control, it can spin as far out of control as it wants to, and you're along for the ride because it started doing it at the beginning. So it's an essential, fundamental element to the world of the film. And so you just accept it and go along for the ride. The other thing that I think is really smart that this movie does structurally is that the main through line, like I said, is a love story. And because it is a love story, you don't really need to have, like, you need to hit the major beats, right, of that you would have in any kind of love story like this. But beyond that, you're not getting locked into a plot the way that you would with like a spy movie, an action movie, like a sci-fi movie, like one of the more heavy genre films that are very much driven by the convention of plot point, plot point, plot point. So you have the license to go on all these insane tangents, right? Because this is a very episodic film in a way, where each scene is this ludicrous comedic setup, and every single scene is so freaking funny. All of the setups are really, really funny. And then the realization of those setups through the jokes, the gags, the dialogue, the visual stuff is so good. Like, they realize the maximum potential of every situation, and every situation is hilarious to start with. So it's just like these escalating levels of hilarious that it's just like perfect comedy filmmaking. Like, I can't overstate how much I loved this movie. But by having the through line be the love story, as long as you continually return to these characters and the kind of emotional relationships they're having with each other, you give yourself license to do whatever the hell you want, as long as you're moving along that trajectory to some kind of conclusion, right? And then you do end up having a big conclusion that ties into the love story, but that is also very preposterous and very much like part of the comedic element of the film. And it's just so well conceived and executed. And there's so much. There's a scene in this movie where like a guy gets a fly in his soup, and all the like waiters at this restaurant are like attacking the fly, and like Stephen Chow character like smashes a glass bottle, like, I'm gonna kill the fly. They're all like, we hate flies, and like, it's so ridiculous. There's another moment where Stephen Chow's going to meet this woman that he's in love with at the bus stop, and he sees her across the street, and he's behind kind of like a barrier, right? Like a railing along the street, right? And he goes to jump over the railing to walk across the street to meet her, and right as he does, like a minibus type of thing just plows him over. Like, it's so stupid, but it's so funny. There's another, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but in that same scene, that was one of the scenes, the scene where he's at the bus stop. That was another one of the scenes where I literally had to stop the movie because I was laughing so hard. I lost track of what was going on in the scene. There's dog shit in that scene. I'm not going to tell you what happens to it, but I had to rewind it. Like, I legitimately I missed so much of the scene from laughing that I had to rewind it and watch it again because I was like, I don't even know what's going on right now. I just know that there's dog shit. And this is amazing. I can intellectualize it and I can talk about how damn funny it is. There's amazing cultural references. Like I said, the Terminator 2 thing is so funny. Some of it is pretty risque for 2024. This movie's 30 years old at this point, right? But there's like stuff in this movie that at the time I don't think was risque. But now, and it's not the kind of thing, like there are certain Hong Kong movies from bygone eras where there are jokes and comedy you couldn't get away with now for good reason. Where you're like, I don't know that's funny. Or like, and you know what I'm talking about if you've seen these films, and we don't need to go into details on it, right? But with this movie, there is risque stuff where like if this movie came out in 2024, people might be upset about it because of certain words that they use or setups of the jokes. But it's not, I personally did not find any of it to be offensive or to have gone too far, right? It's done well enough, and it's done with, this movie has so much charm. It's so likable. It's like very violently inoffensive, right? Like, it's a movie that aims to please, to make you laugh, to make you happy. It's not a movie that's trying to be confrontational or like push your buttons or be like rude or dismissive or flippant or like edgy or anything like that, right? And so because it's so overwhelmingly likable, it can get away with kind of pushing the boundaries in like a couple scenes with some of the jokes, but without going too far. Another thing that I think this movie does incredibly well is that it has a phenomenal female character. The central female character in this film is the most intelligent, like self-respecting, dignified character in the whole movie. arguably with the most agency of any character. Like, and it's really interesting because you very much see like a world of women. Like, she's taking this martial arts class, and in multiple scenes, you see her in the locker room with the other women afterwards. And it's not like, oh, they're naked and taking showers and we're being voyeuristic and looking at them. They're just like one of them's reading the horoscopes in the newspaper or something like that. And they're like, it is like, about love lives and stuff like that because it is a love story, right? But, it shows them in their world, in their environment, these women talking to one another without the presence of men, just being natural with each other. And they have a lot more dignity and self-respect and agency than the male characters do, who are all these kind of like ridiculous buffoons, right? Which again is another really intelligent thing that this movie does, because they're not treating women as objects for men. They're not eye candy. They're not purely the object of male desire. They're not like any of these tropes of like the virgin or the whore or anything like that. They're just real people, right? So automatically that appeals to anyone in the audience who doesn't want to see a movie where the women are just kind of these objects, right? But who likes three-dimensional portrayals of women and men and relationships and normal social dynamics, right? But you also kind of tap into this cultural thing, which is prevalent in, I think, a lot of cultures, where like, the woman is the one who runs the household. The woman is the one who has all her shit together. The woman is the one who has to be, taking care of everybody and having a clear head and being focused and being logical. And the man is just kind of like this hapless clown. Right? And that's very much the dynamic of the characters in this film. And so, if you're trying to make a populist film that will appeal to the widest audience possible, it makes sense to play into tropes and stereotypes while also kind of sending them up. And yet, at the same time, by doing that, you create a really tremendous central female character in the middle of this film, who I think for that era especially is a really great example of how you make like what is essentially a male-driven movie that is not so purely male and juvenile and chauvinist and sexist that it's off-putting to women. So the movie is Love on Delivery. I could talk about it until I'm blue in the face. I have gone red in the face from laughing talking about it. This is, I don't want to like shoot myself in the foot and like have to eat my words when I do my end of the year favorite first watches list, but as of now, this is my favorite Hong Kong first watch of the year, and it's hard for me to imagine something coming along that I'll like more than this, but you never know. You never know. My name is Will. You're watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. As always, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.